Well, guys, with that, this show just proved that whenever a character is going to have a dinner party, nothing good is going to come out of it. Hey guys, Kevin remember for Outlander, Season 2, Episode 4, La Dame Blanche, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. This season has been incredible so far, and I was really hoping this episode would keep up with that consistent tone, and it definitely did. I absolutely love this episode. Another really incredible episode, especially the ending. Oh my god, we're definitely getting into that. So many amazing revelations in this episode, definitely some really great stuff that we set up in this episode. And while we do have the really big stuff, this was, again, another setup episode, but there were a lot of things that came out in this episode. But let's just get into this episode because there is a lot to talk about as usual, and I just keep on loving this season, but let's just get into it. So we start off again, we see Jamie and Minister Duvernay. They are again playing chess, but this time Claire is actually present. She's right by his side, and she's rubbing her belly as Duvernay inquires about the baby's name, and you can tell this is the first time that they've actually talked about it. We see that Claire wants to name him after the uncle who raised her, Uncle Lamb or Lambert, and Jamie thinks it's a terrible idea, and I love that at first, it seems like this is a funny scene, but it's really not because we do see how distant these two really are. Jamie already, shuts down the idea immediately. He says that it's too English, and he clearly is thrown off by his chess game. He suggests an alternate name, Dalhousie, as in the castle, and Claire remarks the name sounds like a sneeze, and, that was kind of funny that we saw that here, but eventually this scene does become a lot more important than we thought, but I thought right away, really good stuff, and we see a lot more of the Comte Saint-Germain in this episode. He surveys the chessboard briefly before revealing the eventual outcome, and in favor of Duvernay, Claire and Jamie are clearly skeptical of his presence. They don't know what Saint-Germain has planned, but they definitely don't trust him, and basically, Saint-Germain continues disparaging their game. Jamie concedes defeat, but Duvernay considers it a draw, admitting Jamie was clearly distracted, and Claire, assuming responsibility, exits Jamie's company and search another means of preoccupation, and Jamie and Duvernay, they rotate seats, and they begin again, and basically you can just tell, this is pretty much Jamie's life right now. He's playing chess with Duvernay, and he's just really into it. So meanwhile, Claire receives a glass of wine from a servant. Though not side by side, Jamie and Claire keep a keen eye on one another, and in the room, Duvernay confides to Jamie that the French king is intrigued by a French-English alliance, because that's of course what Jamie wants to do. He wants the French and the English to ally together, and that the king is intrigued by that. So Jamie feigns mild excitement at this, saying that it's, really encouraging news, and Claire takes a healthy swallow of her beverage when Comte enters the frame. Her cocktail does not sit well. She doubles over coughing and wheezing, and it's a crazy scene. I mean, we don't know why this is happening, why she's coughing, what's going on here, and we don't know if the Comte is, I'm not going to say that the Comte is responsible for this, but it does seem like that is a possibility. The Comte could be responsible, and Jamie notices her panic state, immediately swoops in, scoops her up, gets her safety home, and Le Comte wears a suspicious look of satisfaction at their departure, and we're partially supposed to think that he was involved in this. I mean, that really is what this seems like, that he was involved with whatever happened to Claire. I don't know if she was poisoned, if he just did something to her. I don't really know, but right away, she doesn't think that it's poison, but she is very weak, and she tells Jamie that she doesn't think she was poisoned, and she explains him the effects of Cascara, the concoction she discussed with Master Raymond in the last episode, that when ingested, only mimics the effects of poison. So it's not poison, it is in fact Cascara, and Jamie confronts her with a cup of tea, inquires the safety of Claire's special cargo, and the Barnay is fine. They discuss potential assassins, including Le Comte and his servants, and Jamie yearns for revenge. He can tell there's definitely someone was behind this, and Claire admits that she'd enjoy it also, but with the lack of sufficient evidence combined with the potential damage brought on by a scandal, they agree to bide their time, and Claire then experiences a cramp, begs Jamie for distraction, further details about Duvernay, and Jamie informs her of the French king's interest in an alliance, that he does want to do this. Then Jamie has his epiphany, and basically decides that they should host a dinner for the Duke, which is a terrible idea we'll get into later, but the Duke and the Prince we see have never met in person. The Duke will want to take the measure of the Prince, and decide if he's a person worth staking his fortune and his life on. That's the best thing to do, is basically that these two, they will come to an agreement and see if it actually does work out, because of course we know the Duke is against what Jamie wants to do, and he's thinking if the Duke and the Prince come together, they can come to some sort of an agreement, and, in Jamie's mind, this is a great idea. You can tell that Claire's kind of skeptical about it, but right now, she's kind of weak, she doesn't really get to say anything. So Jamie lays out the plan, stages the evening to showcase the Prince's weaknesses and create doubt with his potential stakeholders, namely the Duke of Sandagram, and Claire agrees verbally, but her face betrays her, and basically, finally it comes out, because you knew this was going to happen at some point. She knows that Murtaugh wanted her to reveal this to Jamie. She finally tells Jamie that Jack is alive, and we're thinking that, she thinks Jamie's gonna get really upset, but Jamie's actually thrilled. He literally looks like a schoolboy. Like, it's crazy. The way that he just lights up, he's actually happy. But it's really interesting, actually. He expressed his utter relief in the knowledge that he now has the opportunity for revenge. That really is what this is about. That's why he's been so upset. It hasn't just been because of the fact of what Jack did to him. It's the fact that he hasn't been able to get his revenge, and he can therefore put his demons to rest, and he says thank you, and she's thinking that he's going to go back to Scotland. And he's saying, no, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to wait for the right time. But now that he knows that Jack is still out there, he knows that he can get his revenge, which is the one thing that will just make him feel contempt with himself. And that's the one thing that Jamie really wants to do that he hasn't gone to do, and he really does want to do. So next morning, Murtaugh and Claire cross paths. He knows the spring in Jamie's step. Claire reveals her secret about Jack is out, and Murtaugh's eyebrows do a thing, and they part ways. You can see that Murtaugh is kind of happy, but also kind of upset because he kind of wanted to be there for this revelation. But basically, I really do love, especially last week's episode, I love the bonding that Claire and Murtaugh had. I mean, it seems like something that's developed just this season, but it really does show that just putting Murtaugh in the mix really does increase their bond, and I really do love seeing that. So soon after, Claire visits Master Raymond's apothecary to interrogate him about the Cascara, because she really wants to make sure that this is Cascara, and she knows, of course, that he is associated with the Comte. Even though he, blows the Comte, she knows that definitely him and the Comte were talking about something. So she's kind of thinking he could have known what's going on. So his assistant abruptly informs him that they have a spy, and Raymond invites Claire into a hidden room within his shop, and basically she's immediately intrigued, and Claire's curious and picks up a dinosaur skull, and Raymond seems to peer into her soul, but in a non-threatening sort of way, as he mentions his fascination with things not from this time, which is very interesting. And I'm kind of wondering, if he thinks that she's could be from the past. I kind of feel like from the present. I feel like that kind of is starting to go through his mind. The fact that he says it's not from this time. He then calls to question what is really bothering her, and she says she's worried about an old friend. His name is Frank. And of course, she has to be as low-key about this as possible, because any other details, like I said, I really do think Raymond is starting to suspect that there could be something about Claire that's just not from this time. I mean, Claire's a certain nature to her that just doesn't say 1700s. Even though Claire, I think, is acclimated to the 1700s, she's always going to have this part of her that isn't going to feel like the 1700s, and I think this is a big part of that, definitely, and I think we definitely did see that here. So Rain reaches first cup of sheep knuckle bones. Claire's familiar with a similar fortune-telling ritual practiced by the Zulu tribes in Africa, and she tosses the bones onto a zebra skin. Raymond insists that though he cannot read Frank's fate, she is not to worry, as she will in fact see him again. He's confident that she will, and Claire appears dumbstruck, and he says that that's what the bones say, before offering a totem for protection, a stone that changes color when exposed to poison, which is a magic stone, and she decides to take it because this is going to give her protection, and basically, he doesn't know what Frank's fate is going to be. He knows that things are in store well for Frank, and we know that's true, that Frank is going to be okay, and basically she decides to take this magic stone, and after we see Claire goes to Louise, feigning excitement over a new cuckoo clock, which I thought was kind of funny, that she just is so excited about this cuckoo clock. But that scene with Raymond and Claire gives us this tension I don't really think we've seen before. Raymond is very much like Claire's Galus. I will definitely say, Galus. I will definitely say that. Galus is very much like what Raymond is becoming, but I feel like Raymond is starting to become kind of toxic for Claire in the sense that he really doesn't seem like he trusts her. Well, not necessarily not trust her. I think it's more of he definitely suspects stuff about her, and that definitely worries Claire, because obviously she doesn't want to reveal her identity. The only person that knows is Jamie, and I feel like Murtaugh is very slowly going to find out very soon. I don't know when, but I feel like by the end of the season, Murtaugh will definitely know. My fear is that Raymond will know as well, which is definitely going to be a problem. So I feel like Raymond is definitely starting to get suspicious of Claire, just in the sense that he said he's fascinated with things not from this time. That conversation really intrigued me. So we see Claire, she goes to Louise's house, she's feigning excitement over a new cuckoo clock, and Mary is there, clearly delayed by the interactive device. Louise is pleased with her new toy, yet quickly dismisses Mary, reminding her to leave the pet monkey alone. We know, of course, the way that Louise and Mary interact, that Louise pretty much, full-on hates Mary, and she then confesses to Claire that she is with child, but not by her husband, and she asks Claire for assistance in correcting the situation, and Claire talks Louise through her options, including induced termination, as well as leaving her husband for the child's father, and Louise insists this is not possible. That was not common back then. There was no abortion back then. There was no leaving your husband. Women didn't get to do that sort of thing. That, again, like I said, a big part of the season is the etiquette, and a big part of the etiquette back then is that women kind of just stayed home while the men seeked out missions and things like that. Claire's not used to that kind of world, and they settle on the decision to convince Louise's husband that the child is his, and basically that's what she needs to do, which very much mirrors the first scene we got this season, well, the first episode we got this season with Claire and Frank, and Claire admitting to Frank that it wasn't his child. I don't know, just something about that. I feel like that's definitely foreshadowing events that's going to happen, which we know is going to happen, obviously, which I thought was very well done the way they did that. I mean, we're definitely going to get back to that at some point. We know that we started this season with that. We're going to get back to that. It just adds, I think, this really good just this really good foreshadowing to pretty much every scene we get with things like this, and I definitely did love seeing that. So basically, we then see that after a lawn and sword day, Claire is finally home, tucked away in bed. Jamie returns and greets her with a kiss. He's unusually excited in her doings and in her. He strips quickly, climbs into bed, and she reciprocates and then sees him bite marks on his upper thighs, and right away she knows something is going on. And I loved the scene between Claire and Jamie. Like I said, they feel very distant at this point. Jamie's kind of involved in this whole mission. He's kind of involved with his kind of stuff, and him and Claire are kind of distant right now. And we really get to see that distance throughout the scene. We see Jamie admits a whore at the whorehouse did get a bit carried away, but he swears that nothing happened. Claire thinks that it was 69, but he says straight out that nothing happened. And when Claire asks if the marks are from that brunette whore Fergus is talking about, Jamie confirms that it's not. It's a different girl entirely, but apparently she's really into Swazel Neof, which is, of course, Gaelic for 69. So, naturally, Claire is pissed. Jamie insists and admits he was both tempted but relieved, and the couple finally come to terms with the fact that they haven't been intimate since Jamie's rescue, and it is a problem, as we know. Any time that they've tried to have sex, Jamie has shrugged it off because of the fact that he just sees Jack whenever they have sex, and Jamie admits that prior to Claire's acknowledgement of Jack's existence, he felt mentally trapped during the romantic moments. Basically, Jack haunted him, knowing that Jack was dead and knowing that he couldn't get his revenge, that haunted him, but now knowing that Jack is alive, he can actually do this again. He's unable to separate reality from memory. She acknowledges that she feels abandoned preparing for the child alone, and I love the scene that Claire says that first time they talked about names, this is the first time they ever talked about it, was in front of the minister, and Claire struggles but finally sees his post-traumatic stress for what it is, something that he battles every day, and basically he says, we get this incredible monologue from Jamie where it said that there was this place inside him, a place that he thinks everyone has that they kept to themselves, a fortress, where the most private part of his lives, maybe it's his soul, the bit that makes you yourself and not anyone else, but after Wentworth, it was like his fortress was blown apart, and the thing that once lived there was exposed in the open without shelter, and that's where he's been ever since, naked and alone, trying to hide under a blade of grass, and we can see that this revelation that Jack is alive really has fixed things for Jamie, because he now feels that he can get his revenge on Jack, and he feels like, he doesn't have that luring spirit of Jack haunting him anymore. So he retires to the daybed for the evening, and because too much has already been said, Claire goes to him to the night, but he's not asleep, and he lays awake pensive. She's calm now too, looking to mend her wounds and his, and they actually have sex for the first time, we see, which was a really great scene. And something I love about Claire and Jamie's sex scenes is that they never feel gratuitous. They've talked about this before, that they were only going to have sex scenes this season if they actually did something to the plot. And this absolutely does that, because what this does is showing Jamie and Claire getting back to that closeness and intimacy that we know they do so well. The fact that Jamie finally revealed to Claire what was going on, the fact that Claire now knows, it's a very well done scene. I definitely really loved that. I thought it was incredible stuff, and I'm glad that these two finally reconcile what was going on there, because it was obviously becoming a problem, and I like that they acknowledged it was becoming a problem, and they did fix that. So the pair remain cuddled in bed together after, and they seem lighter somehow, with their bond reforged. The universe returns to balance briefly, but the moment of intimacy vanishes when Jamie hears footsteps on the roof. Dagger in hand, he swings the windows open, pulls their intruder in, and it's the Bonnie Prince, Charles, and he is soaping. He is covered in from the, he is drenched from the rain and apologizing for the disturbance. Jamie, irritated, remains calm and welcomes him, formally presenting Claire, who is in nothing but her shift and robe, and she inquires about an injury to his right hand. He requests about her medical service and a whiskey stat, and as she cleans and bandages the wound, the prince tells the story of how he and his lover were quarreling, and upon her husband's untimely return, was forced to flee, and in the process, her pet monkey bit him. She was in the process of ending it with him at the time, making matters worse. He then gallantly declares his interest to win her back, and upon learning the pet monkey, Claire realizes that Louise is the prince's lover, which means the prince is the father of Louise's baby, which this is very interesting, the fact that we found this out. I like that we had the prince be the father here, Because so far, we've known the prince is very religious and that, God is the only person he loves, but it does show that Louise, he is in love with and that he really does want to be with her. And this isn't just some affair to him. He does actually really love her. And especially because affairs weren't common back then, as we know. And Jamie and Claire see the prince on his way. They retreat to the dining room for a nightcap and some spousal gossip. And that's when they have a stroke of genius. They're clearly back in sync. And basically, they modify their dinner party plan, invite Louise and her husband, who are now expecting. And Jamie says that they'll use his broken heart to break his bank. And Claire wonders that they are officially bad people, and I thought that was kind of interesting that she worries that they are officially bad people there, because they're really not doing something good. They're doing this to break him. That's really the point here, and for Louise to find out and everything. So Jamie rebels. It's in the name of a good cause, and they kiss, and they think it's really a good thing to do. They're, the fact that they're going to this dinner party, there's really nothing wrong with it. They think everything's going to be okay with that. So basically, 1 week later, the dining room is set for the party that night, but Claire is off to the hospital. An explosion in the armory has left several patients in critical condition. She swears to be back before sunset, ready to receive guests. Jamie says fine and insists she take Murtaugh and Fergus. Her 2 escorts kill time outside the hospital by throwing daggers and engaging in some very amusing conversations. They're interrupted by Mary, who informs them that Claire will be an hour longer. Fergus frets, and as this is not in accordance with their schedule, and after she leaves perceptive, Fergus points out to Murtaugh that Mary is heartbroken, that she must marry a suitor while she loves another. And intrigued, Murtaugh asks of the housemaid and Suzette and if she is in love with anyone, and Fergus says yes, anyone willing to pay her attention. So you can tell that Murtaugh really is falling for Suzette, and it's honestly kind of cute. I really do like seeing Suzette and Murtaugh bond, because we know that Murtaugh very much hated everything about France up till Suzette, and Suzette really has made him appreciate France more, and it's kind of a fun scene. I definitely do like seeing that, and Murtaugh still adds some really nice lighthearted stuff to the show, and I still really do like that. I think it's very well done, and I really enjoyed seeing that. So, basically, meanwhile, inside the hospital, we see Claire's busy assisting another doctor with a patient suffering from a broken tibia. Bouton is busy too. The lead medic inserts a pin into the patient's leg, taps it with a hammer. We were reminded how graphic and how hard it is to watch some of these scenes. I mean, this scene was very hard to watch. And instantly the patient screams, sees he's not dead, but the pain is neutralized. And impressed, Claire asks what just happened. He explains that by piercing a specific nerve, you can numb the pain briefly. They get to work setting the broken bone. He hands Claire a jar of ointment to soothe the wounds, and she asks him of the balm's contents, and he says hangsman's grease made from the rendered fat of hanged criminals. Mary looks like she wants to vomit as she rubs the grease between her fingers. Claire dismisses her. The medic tends to another patient, and Mother Hildegard informs her that when he is not at the hospital, he is in fact the royal executioner, and she goes in to compliment Claire's skill as a healer, and is again very impressed with how great Claire is as this healer. And I like seeing the bonding, like I've said, between Hildegard and Claire. It's a really nice bond that I don't think we had last year, and I really did enjoy. So with her workday done, Claire leaves the hospital, instead of returning home in her carriage, which is now out of commission due to the broken wheel, and the group, Claire, Murtaugh, and Mary, they set off home on foot, and meanwhile the guests are arriving. Jamie's handling the meet and greet solo, but instead of being angry by Claire's tardiness like in last week's episode, he actually remains calm, mainly because they are together and they're on the same boat here. He knows what's going on. Before he was upset because he didn't get to talk to Claire, he had that void of Jack leaning over him, but now that they've gotten everything out, they had that night of intimacy, their bond is really back, and really feels like that spark that was gone in the relationship is back now, and he knows if she's late, she has a reason for it. She's not doing it just to be tardy, she has a genuine reason. So the Duke of Sandogram arrives with nothing but salutations and words of flattery, and his secretary, Alex Randall, we know is there, Jack's younger brother, and Jamie remains composed. Additional guests file in at one at a time, including Mary's Uncle Silas, which let me just point out, I think the reason that Jamie also is very happy that Jack's alive is because he found out from Claire. If he found it from anyone else, I think he'd be really pissed. If he found out from Murtaugh, he'd be really upset. If he found out from Alex Randall, he'd be really upset. I mean, there's no telling what could happen if Claire didn't tell him. So I'm glad that Claire was the one to tell him. I feel like Murtaugh wanted to be the one, but I'm glad that Claire was the one, because that's really why Jamie's really happy about this. So additional guests file in one at a time, including Mary, Uncle Silas, and her betrothed, a stooped man thrice her age and with a creepy disposition. So time ticks away, and before we know it, it's 8 o'clock. Claire is still not home. Jamie's getting very worried, but sees to his hosting duties. Thankfully, Fergus arrives ahead of the others and informs Jamie of the delay. Then the prince arrives. Jamie introduces him to Sandogram, and back in the city, Claire, Mary, and Murtaugh make their way home. It's dark now, and Mary confesses to Claire that she is in love with the man with whom she's been secretly corresponding corresponding with for weeks, and she reveals that it is in fact Alex Randall, and this makes sense why her and Jack are going to get married, because we know that Mary and Jack are going to get married, and Claire stops in her tracks. Murtaugh, who's following the ladies here, annoys. He turns around, assassin leaps on him from the roof. They're ambushed, and Murtaugh is knocked unconscious, and Claire does her best to scream, call attention, but to no avail, and Mary, who of course we know is afraid of sexual contact to begin with, she's beaten and raped. Very hard to watch, especially because we know that Mary is terrified of this. Like, we know in general, Mary does not like sex whatsoever. She doesn't want to talk about it. She doesn't want to hear about it. She just does not like sex, and seeing this was just terrifying to watch. I mean, oh my god, I mean, this season has been, I'm not going to say low-key, but it hasn't been as brutal, but damn, I mean, this was really hard to watch, definitely. So back to Jamie, we see, to his dismay, Santagram has arrived, Lake Comte Saint-Germain and his wife into the Fraser home, and Jamie remains the consummate host, but is weary of his uninvited guests, because he really doesn't trust the Comte. He knows that the Comte could have been responsible for Claire's poisoning, and that really concerns Jamie, as we know. So, of course, he doesn't know that Mary is being raped right now, either. So during Claire Murtaugh and Mary's violent attack, one of the masked assassins removes Claire's hood. He is disturbed to realize that they are attacking La Dame Blanche, and the man make the sign of the cross and run away, screaming, "Save your soul, La Dame Blanche." And Claire grabs Mary and cradles her, and I don't really know what that means, La Dame Blanche, what that's all about, but at the party, Louise and her husband finally arrive. Jamie is sure to make introductions immediately. Prince Charlie lingers a little too long for her comfort as he takes Louise's hand in greeting, and you know that something bad is going to happen here, because obviously Jamie's plan, as we know, is for Charlie to admit that Louise is pregnant with his child. And concurrently, a servant notifies Jamie that Claire and party are in distress. Discreetly, he abandons his guest to Claire's aid. She and Murtaugh summarize the attack. Murtaugh is carrying an unconscious Mary, but Jamie's only concern is for Claire and the Béarnais, because they are the ones that plan this whole event. He's most concerned about her. She tells him that they're both alright, and just then Alex appears to help tend to his love Mary. It's a very hard scene to watch, again, because just knowing how innocent Mary is, and knowing that Mary is no longer a virgin, just that revelation is crazy. And Jamie asks Murtaugh if you recognize their attackers, and basically, Murtaugh mentions the mask, and the two prepare to set out for revenge. Claire puts a halt to this, insists that they commit to the plan at hand, and attempt to sabotage the prince, and the best thing to do, is to not cause a ruckus right now. So, she sends Fergus for her medical box, and they take Mary inside to rest and heal, and obviously, she needs to recover. So Jamie attempts to argue, but Claire shuts it down because he really doesn't know what to do here. And after taking to Mary, Claire asks Alex already at the bedside to look after her if she wakes. And Suzette, Claire's maid, helps her dress in a flash. Jamie points out that it's not too late to cancel the whole shindig as dinner is not served yet, because he knows that Claire is obviously very concerned about Mary. I mean, we know these two have struck up a connection. We know these two have become very close. And we know that Claire obviously is going to make sure that things stay intact with Mary and Frank, which she has not told Jamie about, as we know. That's the one thing that Jamie doesn't know about right now, is the whole connection that Mary and Jack have, and that these two need to be married, and that Jamie is not going to be able to get that revenge that he desires because of the fact that Jack and Mary need to be married, or else Frank is not going to be alive. And it's not so much that Claire wants Frank to live. It's not so much about that. It's the fact that she knows that if she never meets Frank, then if Frank never lives, then she'll never be introduced to Cree na Dune, which will mean she never goes to Scotland and never meets Jamie. I think that's her main concern. It's the fact that, Jamie was, that whole honeymoon with Frank, that's what introduced her to Cree na Dune. And that Cree na Dune is what got her to Scotland, if you remember, and I think that's really Claire's main concern there. So, and also knowing that Jamie's gonna die, I mean, it's really sad to see. So, also, she wants to, we see that Claire wants to contact the authorities about Mary, but Jamie argues against the idea, pointing out that should anyone discover Mary's no longer a virgin, they'll have little left to keep her reputation intact, because we know that Mary's supposed to be the innocent one, the one that's kind of just innocent, and Mary's still innocent, but of course she was raped, and she's no longer a virgin, and in fact, Claire still has trouble reconciling, considering Jamie reveals that Lake Comte Saint-Germain is in attendance, and Claire panics slightly, but basically she can't really do anything. She needs to kind of just remain calm here. So they comfort one another briefly. Jamie leaves the room. Claire takes a few deep breaths, psychs herself up, puts her game face on, welcomes her guest. She apologizes for her delay and invites her guest to dine. She dons her necklace of protection and pretty much is just trying to stay calm here. She's trying to make sure that nothing bad happens because she wants this to go as planned. So she and Louise swap a few sisterly words. Louise confirms her husband thinks the baby is his. And up in Mary's room, Alex speaks soft words to her while she sleeps, and he says that it's okay now. He's going to take care of her. Now, what was interesting is after I watched this episode, because they did put up this episode early on Stars, which I don't know why they did, but they did, the one thing that they did say in this episode is that they tried to make sure that where everyone was sitting, they took note of where everyone was sitting at the dinner table, and it was a very important thing because of where everyone was sitting. If you notice, Claire and Jamie were on opposite sides. Claire and the Comte are like right next to each other because Claire is very suspicious of him, and she obviously is kind of scared that he's in attendance, but has to remain kind of calm. So Claire sits at one head of her table, flanked by Le Comte on her right and his wife Le Comtesse on her left, and as Sandergram tells tales of meeting with the Pope at the Vatican, Prince Charles is already irritated as the Pope did not grace his own divine presence in person, and Jamie and Claire swap glances across the table that seem to just say yes, that this is all working the way they want it to. So Claire presses the Duke to make a joke, counting on his penchant for tacky humor, and that's exactly what he does. He tells his joke, belittlement of short people. The Prince is not amused, because as we know, the Prince is not really witty like the Duke is, and that's something that the Prince and the Duke we know that these two don't get along. So Comte and Claire exchange sordid and threatening glances, just knowing that Claire knows that someone is out to get her, and she really is, convinced that the Comte is the one. Just that look that the Comte gives her, I think, right away notes that they're definitely the Comte is suspicious. And we see the Prince, a short man, attempts to speak of his future uprising, but Louise interjects, wishing to talk about the opera, something she and her husband both love, and we can see the Duke and guests seem relieved by the lighthearted topic. The Prince chimes in again, asks Sandergram if he has ever taken a wife, and Sandergram admits to never having found a woman to put up with him. The Prince continues to cast as aspersions of the fairer sex, clearly looking to insult Louise, and then Claire gives Jamie the signal, it's go time to drop the bomb, and Jamie just needs to say right out that he says he understands congratulations on order for the Madame and the Marquise, and he publicly announces their pregnancy, literally right off the bat, and Louise is taken aback, but maintains her composure and speaking their excitement as a couple, because again, her etiquette, she needs to remain ladylike, and that's something that she needs to do here, because that's just how women were back then. They remained very classy, and Louise needs to keep that classy, composure, even though she pretty much wants to just fucking kill Jamie right now. So Charlie looks as someone just kicked his, Charlie is obviously really upset. He looks as someone just shot someone he cared about or something, but he raises a glass, wishes them both eternal happiness, because that, of course, we know was not the plan. He finishes his wine in one swallow, slams down his glass, proceeds to insult Louise's husband. Things are back on track. Mary wakes disturbed and panicking by a man's presence at her bedside. Alex tries to calm her, but she hits him and flees the room. And back at dinner, Le Comte comments on Claire's stone necklace. Le Comte points out that it's supposed magic properties, and the dining conversation ceases when a young woman is heard screaming in the next room, and of course it's Mary reliving the attack. Alex chases after her, attempting to calm her. They fall to the floor, him on top of her. The guests file suit into the sitting room, and assumptions are pretty much Mary was, of course, raped, but here they pretty much realize that Mary was raped, and it's this really hard scene to watch, just realizing that Mary, of all people, was the one that was raped, and basically we see they fall to the floor. The guest file suites into the sitting room, and assumptions are made. Does not look good. Jamie intervenes, removing Alex from the situation, but it's too late. It's not going to work out. Mary's relations think Alex is defiling her and are hellbent on defending her virtue. Jamie attempts to defuse the situation and explains, but tempers are raging. The drinks are been flowing. A full-scale brawl literally erupts in Claire's living room. Claire removes Mary from harm's way, obviously trying to protect her, and the Duke decides it's time to go. Murtaugh enters the fight, killed Donnelly. He raises his dagger to wield a terminal blow. Jamie grabs his wrist, basically giving him a thank you, but not here, basically. That he's happy that he tried to help him, but just not, this was not the place. Because obviously this was not at all going the way they wanted to. They want this to remain very low-key and not look like a threat, and already things are not going well. So Le Comte uses diversion as an opportunity to escort the Prince home, and the episode ends with Fergus taking advantage of a fully spread and abandoned dinner table, Jamie knocking a man out with what looks like an ornate curtain tassel, and that is how the episode ends. So already things are crazy. Things did not obviously go the way that Claire and Jamie wanted, and that's how this episode ends. Really crazy stuff in this episode, obviously. Knowing that, of course, that notion that Mary is no longer a virgin, it's really crazy to think about. I mean, just knowing that Mary was raped. Mary, who we know is the one that was afraid of sex and didn't even want to talk about sex. I mean, it's terrifying to think about. And of course, people that don't know Mary probably do think that she did have sex and that, she cheated on her husband and everything, which again is a crazy situation. But then the whole situation going on with Louise and the prince. That's really crazy as well. We'll have to see what happens with that. But let's talk about Claire and the Comte, because I think the Comte really does have some sort of plan for Claire. We know that he obviously is planning his revenge. We know from the beginning Jared said to them in the first episode that the Comte does not let things go, and the Comte is getting his revenge on Claire for him having to destroy his boat. He's going to try to destroy Claire just like she destroys his boat. I feel like that's really where we're headed, that he really wants to destroy her in any way he can, and I think that's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that. Claire and Jamie as well. The sad part of this is that Jamie's not going to be able to get his revenge on Jack. I think he wants to, but he's not going to be able to, as we know, because of the fact that Claire, we knows what's going to happen, that Mary and Jack need to end up together. They're the two that end up together, and if that happens, Frank never lives, and if that never happens, she never meets Jamie, and it's obviously a very complicated situation that I'm sure she's going to tell him about. And then as far as Murtaugh goes, I mean, obviously Murtaugh did want to help Jamie, but we can see that the end of Murtaugh being kind of like comedic relief is done. We can tell that he really does love Suzanne. He really does want to protect Jamie. We'll have to see what happens with that. But overall, guys, absolutely love this episode as usual. Amazing stuff. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. Really crazy stuff. I mean, this season, really, they're not holding back. I love this episode. And we'll see you guys next year, which will be for the season premiere of Penny Dreadful. Yes, I'm going to watch it early. It already is up. It's been up since like last Sunday. I'm going to watch it before the premiere tomorrow, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.